From the vast expanse of the Mediterranean, a ghost from the past has emerged from the depths. In June 2016, between Sicily and Tunisia, a bomber wreck was found on the Mediterranean seabed at a depth of 85 meters. It was initially believed to be an RAF Bristol Beaufort, but after experts examined the photographs, it became obvious that it was not a British-built aircraft. They spent 6 years relying on eyewitness accounts from the region, as well as German and British military records before they could finally unravel the mystery. The downed aircraft was identified as an American-built four-man light bomber whose crew included a Canadian and an Australian, which had gone missing on June 15, 1942. But a quick glance at the map would have revealed that it was not only beyond the range of any British territory at the time, but also that there would not be any American units operating in the region for at least 5 months. So how did it end up on the Mediterranean seabed at that time and in that location? The wreck turned out to be what the Americans called Model 187 Maryland. The prototype, designed by the Glenn Martin Aircraft Company of Maryland, made its first flight in 1938. The U.S. Army Air Corps did not place an order, but the French were so impressed that they placed an order for over 200 aircraft of the 167 model. 75 still hadn't been delivered to the French Air Force when France surrendered to the Germans in the summer of 1940. They were instead taken up by Britain. The British were impressed enough to place several orders directly for the Royal Air Force. Over 1,000 Model 187 with more powerful engines were delivered to the RAF during the war. The bombers were called Baltimore in RAF service. So that explains how they got into RAF service, but how did it end up in that location? Benito Mussolini's declaration of war on June 10, 1940, followed by an Italian offensive from their colony in Libya into Egypt to take control of the Suez Canal, opened a new front in North Africa. Libya, one of the world's hottest countries, is 90% desert. The barren land meant that food as well as military stores for the 150,000-strong Italian army had to be transported from Italy across this Mediterranean Sea. If we zoom in on the patch of sea in between Italy and Libya, we can see a speck of land. This is the island of Malta, which, when war was declared by Mussolini, had 8 biplanes, 1 gunboat, and a few submarines stationed at the British base on the island. With Malta's location astride the Italian shipping route, transporting vital supplies and reinforcements from Europe to the 10th Army in Libya. Both sides recognized the importance of Malta in not only controlling the central Mediterranean, but also the outcome of the whole North African campaign. General Erwin Rommel, who would command Axis forces in North Africa, stated, "Without neutralizing Malta, the Axis can't keep control of North Africa." The Regia Aeronautica resolved to bomb and starve Malta into submission by attacking its ports, airfields, military installations, and Allied shipping supplying the island. Malta became one of the most intensively bombed areas during the war. 6 months after the start of the bombing campaign, Italian aircraft were reinforced with Luftwaffe units in January 1941, when Flieger Corps 10 was transferred to Sicily in support of Axis operations in North Africa. Despite this, Allied convoys were able to supply and reinforce Malta while the RAF defended its airspace. British air and sea forces based on the island were inflicting increasing losses on Axis ships transporting vital supplies and reinforcements from Italy to North Africa. However, by the beginning of 1942, the overwhelming Axis bombardments had substantially eroded Malta's offensive naval and air capabilities. The Luftwaffe and Regia Aeronautica flew a total of 3,000 bombing raids over a period of 2 years. By March 1942, it was clear that Luftwaffe had achieved a measure of air superiority. As the battle for Malta ebbed and flowed over the next few months, a reconnaissance mission like any other took off at 12:45 on June 15, 1942, from its base at the airstrip of Lucca in Malta, and headed for the Pantelleria area. The Baltimore of the 69th Reconnaissance Squadron was crewed by 4 brave souls: Sergeant Francis Baum, Flight Sergeant Alick Greaves, Sergeant William Edward Fincham, and Sergeant Robert Tettrell Purslow. They were from different corners of the globe, but united in their mission of finding Italian supply ships sailing between Sicily and Tunisia, so that bombers and submarines from Malta could be vectored to intercept and destroy them. The mission doesn't go as planned. At 3 o'clock on the afternoon of June 15, 1942, Lieutenant Franz Schies of the 53rd Fighter Wing based in Sicily was flying patrol near the island of Linosa when he spotted what he believed to be a Bristol viewfighter. The aircraft came down about 500 meters off the coast of Linosa, a tiny island that lies south of Sicily. It floated for a few minutes before dipping beneath the waves, giving local fishermen time to row out and attempt to save the 4 crew members. Australian Flight Sergeant Alick Greaves died on impact when the bomber hit the sea and was buried in the Medjez Elbab War Cemetery in Tunisia. The other 3 were rescued and eventually shipped off to prisoner of war camps. In December 1943, a cholera outbreak led to the death of RAF Gunnery Sergeant Robert Purslow in a POW camp in Wolfsburg, Austria. Sergeant Francis Baum would also not live to see the end of the war. Only Canadian Gunnery Sergeant William Fincham, who was held captive in Lithuania, would survive the war. After the Axis lost the Second Battle of El Alamein in November 1942, the Allies began Operation Torch, sending troops into the Vichy French-controlled territories of Morocco and Algeria. The Axis diverted their forces to the Battle of Tunisia, and attacks on Malta were rapidly reduced, effectively ending the siege. This discovery brings to life a chapter of history that was lying silent at the bottom of the sea. It's a story of valor, of sacrifice, and of a mystery that took 6 years of research to solve. As the Mediterranean waves continue to wash over the long-submerged RAF bomber, a sense of closure has finally been granted, 80 years after its ill-fated journey. This discovery serves as a poignant reminder of the 4 courageous souls. From different corners of the world, united under the flag of duty and honor, they made the ultimate sacrifice for their countries. May their bravery never be forgotten.
If you liked this video, there are many similar high-quality videos on my channel.